Hey friend, Chris here from WideLogicProRules.com, the website that helps you get the most you can out of Apple's Logic Pro. Today I wanted to take a moment to share with you a set of products that I purchased about almost 6 months ago now, and I've been using day in and day out for the last almost 6 months, and they have been such a benefit and a boon to my workflow and my enjoyment of music and audio in general that I had to share them with you today. And what I'm referring to are the speakers that are right behind me. These are the iLoud Precision MTMs, one of 3 in the iLoud Precision series from IK Multimedia. And again, they have dramatically streamlined and sped up my workflow and increased my enjoyment of music and audio, whether it be recording, mixing, mastering, content creation, editing, songwriting, you name it. I probably have done it in the last 6 months. They have transformed so much for me in my particular situation. And I'm not trying to be sensationalist about it. I'm being very serious. At the time when I ordered the speakers, I had a 4-way setup. I had 2 3-way monitors, plus a separate subwoofer, plus software to tune the speakers to my space. And when I set up the iLoud Precisions and listened to music for an afternoon when I received them, I was so blown away by the sound quality and the DSP and everything that comes with them that old 4-way system, I put up on Reverb the next day, sold them that week, and I haven't looked back since. I'm that serious. So I want to share with you today the iLoud Precisions on the off chance that if you're in the market for shopping for new studio speakers, that you might want to check them out. So let's dig into it. Now, IK Multimedia is no stranger to speaker design as they manufacture the very popular iLoud Micros and iLoud MTM speakers that are best known for their small form factor, almost like a desktop computer speaker, but big sound. But with the iLoud Precision series, IK seems to be staking a claim in what I would call more professional speaker design territory, and I would say they're succeeding. There are 3 flavors to choose from in the iLoud Precision series, starting with the iLoud Precision 5s. This is a classic 2-way design with a 1.5-inch soft dome tweeter and then a 5-inch woofer directly beneath. The next step up is the iLoud Precision 6s with once again a 1.5-inch soft dome tweeter and 6.5-inch woofer. And then the big boys of the bunch, the next step up is the unique design of the iLoud Precision MTMs. This is a 1.5-inch soft dome tweeter in between 2 5-inch woofers. Taking a look inside the box, of course, you get each iLoud Precision speaker plus a power cable so you can connect and power up the speaker. But you also get, number 1, a set of 4 isolation pods that you can place the iLoud Precisions onto. So this ensures that the studio speakers, as they're playing sound, they're not transmitting through the furniture and causing furniture and other things to resonate or vibrate and give you a false sense of what's going on in your mixes and projects, which I think is a really nice touch from IK. Number 2, you also get on a per speaker basis a USB cable to connect the iLoud Precisions to your computer and take full advantage of the complementary X-Monitor application. The X-Monitor app provides a wealth of new controls and information for your iLoud Precision speakers. With X-Monitor, you can change the voicing of the iLoud Precisions to match that of other studio speakers or hi-fi systems or even a cell phone. A really nice feature in my opinion. And number 3, you also get, per speaker, a MEMS omnidirectional microphone that you can connect to each speaker to tune the speakers using the built-in ARC technology. And this, to me, is what makes the iLoud Precisions completely worth it on top of the already great sound. Next, let's take a look at the back of the iLoud Precisions. The first set of controls are frequency controls that you can use to adapt and fine-tune the playback of the speakers for your particular space. By pushing on the individual push buttons, you cycle through different options for controls. Starting all the way to the left, we have a low frequency extension. When set to full, the iLoud Precisions play back at their full intended range. But upon pressing on the low frequency extension push button, you can introduce a high-pass filter to reduce some of the low-end playback from the iLoud Precisions. There are 4 high-pass positions, starting at 35 Hz, 50 Hz, 65 Hz, as well as 80 Hz. So if you'd like to use a subwoofer alongside the speakers, you certainly can do that. After that, we can either boost or reduce the low frequency or high frequency playback of the speakers using both a low shelf set to 100 Hz and below and a high shelf set to 10K and above. And you can boost or reduce in either direction by up to 2.5 dB. After that, we have the calibration and preset button with which you can use to cycle through different calibration functions of the iLoud Precisions. When set to flat, there's no calibration of any sort being imposed on the speakers. However, there is a desk preset that you can enable for each of the speakers in the event that you're going to be placing the iLoud Precisions onto a desk or a console. But also, if you press and hold on the calibration preset button for about 3 seconds, you begin the ARC calibration process for tuning the speakers to your space. After that, you can enable or disable the auto standby mode of the speakers. When enabled, the speakers will go into a low power mode after a certain amount of time of no audio playback. Great for conserving energy when not in use. After that, there's an input gain trim that you can use to boost or reduce the incoming audio from the audio interface by as much as 5 dB in either direction. Then you have the USB port to connect each speaker again to your computer to take advantage of that X Monitor application. To the right of the USB port, we have both an input and output to connect the two iLoud Precisions together with the separately purchased iLoud remote so that you can have remote control of different voicings for the speakers, toggle the ARC calibration on and off, dim and mute the speakers right from your desk without having a separate application open. You do not need the iLoud remote to be able to use the X Monitor software, but I myself purchased the remote and I really find it helpful and handy to have that tactile controller right under my hand as I'm working. After that, of course, we have the analog input to connect the output of your audio interface to each speaker. And to the right of that is the ARC microphone input, so you can conduct the ARC calibration process with the MEMS microphone for each speaker. And seriously, the ARC calibration process is so simple. Let me show it to you right now. To begin the ARC calibration process, you're going to want to put the MEMS microphone on a dedicated microphone stand. The MEMS microphone should be placed at the same exact height as your ears as you would be working on your projects and mixes. The microphone should be placed horizontally, facing both speakers. So in the case of the MTMs, it's really important that the tweeters of each speaker are placed at the same exact height as my ears, and that MEMS microphone should be at that same height too. Then with a standard XLR cable, you connect the MEMS microphone to the input of one of the two speakers. Press and hold for 3 seconds on the calibration and preset button on that speaker. The LED on the front of the speaker will start to blink, and now you're in the ARC calibration mode. Okay, from here you place the MEMS microphone on the microphone stand in the first position of 4 that you're going to use for running the analysis. The 4 placements will revolve around the listening position that you'll be sitting in as you're working. So placement number 1 is kind of a little forward and to the left of the listening position. Once the microphone's in the correct position, you then go to the back of the speaker and then press on the calibration preset button. At this point, you got 5 seconds to get as far away as you can from the MEMS microphone. It's important that you get away from the microphone as much as you can because your body can have an influence on the ARC measurements. So I typically will just go in the other room. After the 5-second wait, that speaker will begin to emit a chirping sound. And the microphone will capture the sound of that chirping in your space, with which ARC will use to build a profile. Once the chirping is complete, just come back into the room. After all 4 placements have been measured, the LED on the front of that speaker will shine green to let you know that the process is complete for ARC, and now a filter has been stored inside the speaker itself to tune the speaker for your space. So now you just rinse and repeat. You go through the same exact calibration process for the other speaker, and once completed, both speakers are now tuned to your space for a truly linear playback experience. Something I truly love about the ARC implementation in the iLoud Precisions is that these stored profiles that tune your speakers to your space are not stored in a separate application in the background on your computer, creating all sorts of latency along the way. Instead, they're stored in the speakers themselves. So that means literally 0 latency or 0 perceptible latency. So in the past with other products that I used for years, it would introduce literally hundreds of milliseconds of latency and it drove me crazy. But with these speakers, I can record or mix or listen back or do anything, and my speakers are always tuned 100% of the time. And I love them for that reason. Of course, you yourself might not be so excited to have to reach behind studio speakers every time you have to calibrate them or adjust their frequency controls. And that's a really great reason to get into the X Monitor application. You can download the X Monitor application from the IK Multimedia Software Manager, then connect each speaker to a USB port on your computer, and then open the X Monitor application. First, you can view both the before and after ARC calibration process by clicking on the numbers 1 and 2 in both the before and after categories to view these curves in the main display. So in the case of the left speaker, we can see the before curve superimposed with the after curve. As you can see, quite a bit of low end going on in my room. But take a look at the after results of the ARC calibration and how much has been improved for a much more reliable playback experience in my space. We can bypass the ARC calibration at any time by clicking on this power button. As long as the link button at the bottom of the window is orange, any adjustments that we make for one speaker will be applied to the other. But here's the thing, you can also go through the entire ARC calibration process from the X Monitor app as long as each speaker is connected via USB to your computer. So if we click on the left calibration button, we begin the ARC calibration process for the left speaker. But the X Monitor app gets even more interesting when you start to dig into the different voicing options that you can use with the iLoud Precisions. If we click on the drop-down menu at the top of the application, even with the ARC-calibrated iLoud Precisions, you can adapt the voicing of the speakers together to emulate the sound of different studio speakers, different hi-fi systems, as well as more consumer playback systems. So check it out. We can change the voicing of the iLoud Precisions to that of a coaxial 3-way monitor, or to that of some classic studio speakers. In fact, the iLoud Precisions can even emulate some of IK's other speaker models. I myself find the smartphone emulation absolutely critical to my mixing workflow, and I in fact have it as one of my remote options in the X Monitor app, which brings us down to the 4 buttons at the bottom center of the application, and these are the remote options for X Monitor. By right-clicking on each button, you can assign a voicing or a function to each one of the 4 remote buttons. For example, we could have our precise and calibrated profile for button number 1. Number 2 could be set to toggle ARC on and off. Button number 3 could be for the smartphone emulation. Button number 4 could be used to mute the speakers. From here, all you have to do is click on each individual remote button in the application or on the separately purchased remote itself to cycle through these different functions of X Monitor. And even better, these functions are stored in the speakers themselves, so you don't have to have the iLoud Precisions connected to your computer at all times. If you're sticking with the X Monitor application and not purchasing the separate iLoud remote, that's A-OK. But if you find the application takes up a little too much real estate on your screen, you can reduce the view of the application just down to those remote functions so that it's immediately accessible on screen, but not taking up all your screen real estate. Okay, obviously, ton of DSP processing technology built into the iLoud Precision speakers, but when you don't include the ARC calibration, the X Monitor application, the voicings, all that stuff, how do these speakers sound on their own? And I'm being 110% honest with you, they sound fantastic. The stereo imaging of these speakers is exact and pinpointed. If I move something from left to right, it sounds like that's where it's coming from. No question about it. Reverb and delay trails are evident and obvious even in a dense mix. These things have bass for days. It's crazy how much bass they can put out. For a speaker their size, it makes no sense. And on top of all that, things like dynamic range of compression and limiting, and even like clipping and intersample peaking of mixes that were pushed a little too loud, very obvious. I'm just blown away by these speakers. And then when you pile on the ARC calibration, the voicings, the X Monitor application, it is a hit from IK Multimedia. And that's why I bought these speakers. So I hope this video was helpful for you. If it was, as always, I highly recommend subscribing on the channel, Wide Logic Per Rules, or to the website itself, widelogicperrules.com. Thanks so much. I'll check you more for later. Take care.